What's up everybody, it's Izzy from PowerliftingToWin, and in today's video I want to start to set up the context for the later part of the nutrition series here, which is going to be reviewing specific diets. But first I want to have, again, that bigger picture talk to kind of set the stage. When you look at any successful diet, it's really doing one thing. It's modifying your behavior to control how much you eat. A lot of times I think people get caught up in the scientific nuances and the scientific merits of one diet over another, like which diet is the most optimal diet. And a lot of the time, some of this stuff to me, when you're talking about on a person-to-person basis, is completely irrelevant, because what ultimately determines the most successful nutrition plan is your level of compliance. That is what you can actually stick to. But again, when a diet works, it's because it changes your behavior to control how much you eat. Now, in my opinion, the most optimal diet, and we'll get into all of this later, I promise, is counting your macros. And the simple reason for this just comes down to precision. When you count your macros, you know exactly what you're eating and how much of you're eating down to the nearest gram. However, for a lot of people, this behavior or this dieting protocol results in neurotic behaviors, where they start avoiding social situations with food, and just in general, they can't stick to it. They just can't handle it. It doesn't work for their lifestyle. Now, if that's the case for you, I just don't want people to feel like they're a failure for that. And I have a lot of clients for whom this is a big issue. I usually will start anybody off with a macro counting diet, because again, I do believe that's what's optimal. But ultimately, you have to look at a lot of the other diets that are strategies that are out there and consider their merits from a lifestyle and compliance standpoint. So let's talk about a few diets in particular to get into the real specifics of what I'm trying to get at here. So first of all, consider low carb or ketogenic dieting. For those who are unfamiliar, a ketogenic diet can loosely be defined as any diet that contains less than 30 carbs or so per day. This is going to produce a state of ketogenesis, basically where the body uses fats to start producing glucose. That's a really oversimplified version. If you want to learn more about ketogenic dieting, I'm going to put a link to Lyle McDonald's book, The Ketogenic Diet, which is essentially like the end-all be-all of ketogenic diet books. But anyways, a lot of people get caught up in the science about low carbing. Like, is low carb the most healthy diet? Is it unhealthy? Does it give performance boosts above and beyond the calories in versus calories out properties? And again, I actually don't. On an individual to individual basis, this doesn't really matter that much. The more interesting thing about a low carb diet is that if you give someone a low carb diet and let them eat however much they want on a low carb diet, they will usually eat anywhere from 50 to 60% less calories than they would on a diet that did contain carbs and sugars and things like that. So a low carb diet can be a great way to control your intake and really drop weight if you're just one of those people who doesn't want to count. Now, another popular diet protocol that's out there that people get caught up in wanking on the scientific details is intermittent fasting. Now, intermittent fasting, for those of you who are unfamiliar again, is a process where you basically eat all of your food inside of a certain window during the day. So you might go 16 straight hours without eating and then eat all of your calories in an 8-hour window. And people love to talk about, the benefits of the fasting period. Does it increase fat loss and things like that? And there's some evidence to suggest that it might. But what's more important to me is that intermittent fasting offers another lifestyle tool for people in particular situations. So say you have somebody who they just can't get in meals at work. It's just their job doesn't allow for it or something like that, right? Intermittent fasting can be a great way for this person to have a eating structure that still allows for them to meet all of their macronutrient goals throughout the week. Now, on top of that, intermittent fasting is also a great way to control people with hunger problems, because after an initial hunger period early on in the fast, most people usually do not get hungry until the fast is over. So you have one part of the day where you're hungry, and then after that you can eat all of your meals in this 8-hour period, which allows you to get in a lot more food in each meal while still ending up with the same overall amount of calories. And in fact, just as a quick aside, for those of you guys who are familiar with the very, very popular powerlifting diet called CARB backloading by John Keefer, in my opinion, the combination of intermittent fasting and low carbing is why this diet works for people. I don't think there's any magic science that allows you to build muscle and lose fat at the same time, what's really happening here is that during the low carb periods, people are eating way less food than they normally would. Then they're also combining this with intermittent fasting, which allows for you to eat bigger meals in the first place without going over the amount of calories that you would normally eat throughout the day. So when you combine both of these tools together, instead of pitting them as adversaries, like which diet is better, you can create an interesting lifestyle type of diet that can allow people to get away with certain types of eating habits that maybe wouldn't be productive outside of that structure. And that's really what I'm trying to get at in this video, is that these diets are tools in your toolbox. Now, on the other hand, sometimes you have people with really fast metabolisms for who these diets just do not work for at all, right? Like if you have somebody who already has trouble holding on to weight, they already have trouble building muscle, they already have trouble gaining weight, lucky you if that's you, you don't want to put this person on a low-carb diet. That makes it way harder for them to get the amount of food that they need. Likewise, maybe intermittent fasting is also inappropriate. So you're asking somebody who already has enough trouble to eat enough food that you want them to eat even bigger meals in one sitting? Probably doesn't make sense. Now let's consider something like bro eating, where you eat like your 6 meals a day with a perfectly spaced out 3 hours or something like that. Again, for a long time, people argued about the science of that, whether that actually speeded up your metabolism, whether it led to more muscle gains or whatever. Okay, that stuff is relevant to a degree, but at the same time, what's more important here is, like, say you tab this guy with the fast metabolism, and you start having him eat six smaller meals a day. Oftentimes, that's a lot more productive and easier for him to get his calories in than it would be if you said, hey, dude, you're going to do carb backloading, and you're going to fast for most of the day, and do low carb on days when you don't train, and then you're just going to eat as much as you can, like post-workout. And that's an unfair characterization of carb backloading, but it is what a lot of people end up doing on that diet. Anyways, my point here being that for this particular guy, maybe the 6 meals a day thing makes perfect sense. I mean, you can even take something as hated as, say, clean eating, right? The ultimate bro bodybuilder diet. And I think this can have merit in all sorts of circumstances. So say you have somebody for whom counting just does not work, but at the same time, they want to gain weight, right? They're trying to build muscle. But counting is just too socially restrictive for their lifestyle. They just don't seem to be able to comply with it. Well, if you have them just eat whatever they want, maybe this is the kind of person that gets fat when they do that, right? If they do the seafood diet, you see the food, you eat it, they get fat. But if you have them say eat clean, and by clean, I guess we'll just define that as like low sugar, high fiber, lowish fat, single ingredient foods, since you can't really define clean. But anyways, you have this person eat those types of foods and just eat till they're full. They can often still gain weight without doing it at an unnecessary rate and without counting, right? So there's still a merit to it. On the other hand, maybe you have one of like the ultimate hard gainers or somebody with a really fast metabolism, and telling them to eat 6 meals a day of purely clean food is just going to result in them losing weight. I've seen it before. That's what happens. So in this case, maybe it's actually appropriate to do something like this seafood diet. I know there's a lot of guys out there with kind of average, mediocre, or even bad metabolisms who hear these stories of guys drenching their pizzas in olive oil or whatever, and they just get infuriated because they think that anybody would get fat doing that. And it's probably 90-95% of people will, but there are people with genetics out there for whom, you need to make that guy eat some cheeseburgers and some pizzas, or he's not going to eat enough calories throughout the day. It's just the way his genetics work, it's just the way his metabolism is. And it's the same thing with the ever unpopular GOMAD, which is drinking a gallon of whole milk a day. In very particular circumstances where you have somebody who just seems to not be able to eat enough food, by adding it in through liquid calories and whole milk, they can often get the job done. Whereas if you just take your guy with the average metabolism who kind of walks around at 20% body fat naturally, you have this guy do GOMAD, he's going to get obese within a month. So you have to know when to apply these tools, but they can be applied in many different circumstances. And my point here is that the nutritional zealotry about what is the optimal diet, scientifically speaking, is an interesting debate. It's a worthwhile debate. It's one we're going to discuss in later videos. But at the same time, you have to realize the limitations when you're talking about actually applying something in practice. I don't think it's productive to have, in the same way, let me put it like this, in the same way that I think that there are certain bodybuilding coaches out there who are terrible for basically just giving people like a meal plan with the 3 superfoods on it, like you got tilapia, brown rice, and like sweet potatoes, and like that's all you can eat. Maybe some, grilled chicken breast if you're lucky, and some asparagus. But like in the same way that is stupid and restrictive, it is stupid and restrictive to tell somebody that, oh, if you can't count your calories or count your macros, you don't want it bad enough, you don't have the discipline. Okay, sometimes that's the case, but in other cases, people, it just doesn't work for them socially, and by making them see it in this black and white, all or nothing zealot way, you kind of turn people off from having any nutritional plan at all, which is just not necessary. And again, guys, when I'm working with clients, I try to determine, what their goals are, A, B, where their starting point is, in terms of their current body composition, and then C, what their preferred lifestyle is, because ultimately, powerlifting is neither a race nor a marathon. It's more like the person who wins is the person who can run the most quality sprints, like over years. That's a more apt analogy in my opinion. So part of that is, though, yes, it may not be 100% optimal if you don't count your macros, but if it at least keeps you doing something that enhances your body composition over, the next 2, 3, 4, 5, 10, 20 years that you're training, that's still beneficial for you. So instead of trying in your mind to pick between IF, if it fits your macros, paleo, clean eating, look at the merits of all of these diets and try to combine them in a way that makes sense for your lifestyle and that allows you to achieve the body composition results that you want without giving up, the things that make your life enjoyable and happy. Because if you do that, you won't stick to your diet, and if you don't stick to your diet, you won't keep your gains. All right, guys? So I hope that was helpful, and as always, check out PowerliftingToWin.com for more great powerlifting information. And most importantly, have a nice day, my friends.